The afternoon began like any other cold, rainy, and filled with the quiet rush of people trying to escape the weather. Inside the cafe, umbrellas dripped onto the floor and jackets steamed in the warm air. No one paid much attention to the small figure who paused at the entrance, shaking slightly as she adjusted her balance. Mara stood there, just 12 years old, steadying herself on a prosthetic leg and clutching her crutches as if they were the only things keeping her upright. Her hair was tied back in a messy ponytail, her clothes worn, her eyes holding a tiredness far beyond her age. She wasn't dramatic or loud. She was simply trying to find a place to rest. But as she slowly scanned the room, people glanced at her only to look away just as quickly, pretending not to notice her struggle. And that quiet invisibility hurt more than the walk that brought her there. As Mara moved slowly between the crowded tables, her crutches tapping lightly against the floor, it became clear she wasn't just looking for a seat. She was looking for a moment of relief, maybe even a moment of kindness. People shifted in their chairs, avoided eye contact, or pretended to be too busy to notice her. She hesitated beside a table where a man sat with his 2 children, her voice almost lost beneath the hum of the cafe. But somehow, she found the courage to speak. "Can I sit here?" It was a small question, barely more than a whisper, but it carried the weight of everything she had endured that day. Rohan looked up, surprised not by her presence, but by how long it must have taken her to ask. In that single moment, something gentle passed between the men. Unspoken recognition of shared struggle, and everything quietly began to shift. Rowan didn't answer right away, not because he was unsure, but because something in Mara's face made him pause. He had seen that expression before, the mix of exhaustion, embarrassment, and silent bravery. It reminded him of his own reflection on the hardest days after losing his wife, when he had to keep going for his children, even when everything inside him felt heavy. So when he finally nodded and gently slid his chair to make space, it wasn't out of pity, it was understanding. Mara lowered herself into the seat carefully, her shoulders relaxing just a little as if she'd finally found somewhere safe to breathe. Rowan noticed the small details, the frayed laces on her shoes, her red fingers still cold from the rain, the quiet way she kept her eyes down as though she expected to be turned away. He didn't say much, but his kindness spoke loudly enough. Rowan didn't want to overwhelm her, so he simply stood up, went to the counter, and returned with a warm sandwich and a cup of hot chocolate, the steam curling softly into the air between them. He placed them in front of her without a lecture, without insisting, just a quiet gesture that told her she mattered. Mara froze, unsure if she should accept something so unfamiliar. But when Rowan gave her a small, reassuring nod, she finally reached out, her hands trembling slightly as she wrapped them around the warm cup. She took slow, careful bites, as if she wasn't just eating but trying to absorb the feeling of being cared for. Meanwhile, his children, Isla and Grady, leaned in with innocent curiosity, asking about her school, her stickers, her favorite things. With each question, a little of her nervousness melted away, replaced by something she hadn't felt in a long time: belonging. As the warmth slowly returned to her face, Mara began speaking in the same careful way a person does when they're not sure if it's safe to open up. She explained that she'd been walking home from school when her prosthetic leg started hurting, but there was no bus she could afford, and no one who could come for her. Her mother worked double shifts, doing everything she could to keep their little world together, and Mara didn't want to add to her worries. She shared it all quietly, not asking for sympathy, just telling the truth of a life where she had learned to push her pain aside. Rowan listened, really listened, and in her hesitant words he heard the familiar sound of someone trying to be stronger than they should ever have to be. And in that moment, he understood just how much she'd been carrying alone. When Mara finally finished her meal, she sat back quietly, as if afraid the moment might disappear. Rowan could see the worry creeping back into her eyes, the kind that comes from knowing you still have a long walk home in the cold. Before she could say anything, he gently told her he would drive her. For a second, she didn't move. She looked at him as though she was trying to understand why someone would offer help without expecting anything in return. Ben. Her eyes softened, shining with a mixture of relief and disbelief. Outside, the rain had eased into a soft drizzle. Rowan held the door open, and Mara stepped out slowly, whispering that no one except her mother had ever done something like this for her. That truth hit him hard. On the short drive, she stared out the window, breathing in the unfamiliar feeling of being cared for. When they reached her apartment building, her mother rushed out, panic fading into overwhelming gratitude the moment she saw her daughter safe. And it was then, standing in the light of the open car door, that Mara finally cried tears, not of sadness, but of finally being seen.